Good morning, Chair Frazier. This is Nina Lemke, the moderator. Just want to see if you want to do a camera and mic check for me.
Yes. Trying to get all set up now. Good morning.
You are?
How's everybody?
See you and hear you, so it's a good day so far. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Shannon, for the guide that you sent over. Do you want to start on time or wait a little bit?
I think we can probably start on time. We've got about another minute or so. It looks like attendees are coming in. Why don't we wait till like a minute after?
Okay.
So I could start a lot of attendees are checking in right now.
We'll see how many of them actually speak.
I think we could probably get started if you'd like.
Sounds good to me. Good morning, everyone. The February 21st meeting of the CAC Laboratory Subcommittee is called to order. I'm Subcommittee Chair Antonio Frazier. Thank you all for joining us today. The first agenda item we have is public comment for items not on the agenda. I want to remind everybody that today's agenda is focused on the implementation of SB 544, and any comments you have on that topic should be held until the next agenda item. Moderator, can you please open the floor for public comment for items not on the agenda?
Yes, sir. We are now taking public comment on agenda item number 1, which is for comments for items not on the agenda. And please keep comments, as he mentioned, limited to this agenda item. And if you'd like to make a comment, you can do so by raising your hand, by clicking the icon next to your name if you've logged on to the meeting, or by pressing *3 if you've called into the meeting. All commenters will have 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning, and each member of the public will have 1 opportunity to speak on each agenda item. And with that, we're going to go to our first commenter, which is Eric. I've sent you a request to unmute. Ooh, Eric. Actually, then Eric is gone. So we're going to go to call-in user number 5. I have just sent you. All right. Sorry, you guys. It looks like 2 of them have disappeared. So we have Taylor. I've sent you a request to All right, Eric, there you go. You were unmuted.
Thank you. Okay, I'll start. There was a list of things that I would like to comment on to make, changes to regulations when they are possible. One of the things is that we have too large of a variance on concentrates. When concentrates are tested, there's an allowable 10% variance between tested amount and labeled amount. Now, when you have a 90% THC concentrate, that can be labeled anywhere from 81 to 99%. So that's much too large of a variance to allow for labeling between tested value and labeled value. One other thing is moisture correction is not a appropriate way to correct for THC concentration. Moisture correction measurements are much too variable themselves. So those are two things that I'd like to get changed to the regulations. And then two other things about embargoes and recalls. There was a recall that just came yet last week for this inhaler, infused inhaler. We noticed that this inhaler has been on the market for 2 years. So why has it been on the market for 2 years and just pulled off now?
30 seconds.
Another, okay. Another question about embargoes. How many embargoes have been placed and not made public? And recalls. There are a lot of products that are on the shelf. I'd like to know, how many more products are contaminated that the DCC knows about. And, it seems that recalls are happening more often. So it seems there's a problem with the contaminated products getting onto the shelves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and for caller user number 5 and for Taylor, if you would like to comment, just please re-raise your hand. And we'll also at this point go to Josh Swider. Just sent you a request to unmute. There you go.
Chemical analysis labs. A couple comments on things that are not the agenda item that should probably be on the agenda item that have been in the past and seem to not be making a lot of progress. These are a few suggestions for additional agenda items. The DCC should be implementing a laboratory meeting quarterly. This has been reviewed before by the DCC and brought up in many situations where all the testing labs can go on a phone call. And we did this once with the BCC with the review methods. The DCC can warn the laboratories. They give expectations of sampling testing protocols. They could field questions from laboratories that are live and don't have to answer at that time, but could be sending out emails to clarify questions for laboratories. It seems like that's a big problem in the industry, is people are not clear on the regulations or we can't get consistent answers. Best practices could be shared during these calls as well. There's a lot of examples of this in many other states, but the DCC does not seem to do this. It seems like minimal work effort to improve something that needs improvement. Off-shelf sampling testing should be being done in the state of California. There's multiple methods the DCC could do to use this. One way would be to use the current labs and have round robins being done off-shelf testing. Other way to continue using state laboratories as testing methods become online. Another way to protect public safety, I think that should be considered a second lab verification. It's a self-checking system with minimal effort or money spent by the DCC, where samples are tested by 2 independent testing labs. After the first lab conducts their original analysis, the second lab would put on a metric hold for a day or so, with a small percentage of tests by each company, and then a second test
30 seconds
before anything is released into the public. I think with all the recalls and embargoes, this would be a very easy step for the DCC to implement. Regulation revisions and testing requirements that needed. We drastically have been begging for a regulation revision to the regulations because there's currently 8 years of botched regulations that could be improved. There's things that are unclear in the regulations that could be clarified very easily. There could be editing of requirements. There could be expanded pesticide testing and other things that are showing up in the public. We've seen news stories as well as a recall. Oh, thank you.
Call-in user number 5. I've just sent you a request to unmute.
Hi, my name's Dominic. I work at Infinite Chemical Analysis Labs. I wanted to bring up a few things. The first thing is I really think that the DCC needs to look at establishing Category 1 pesticide action limits. There's a lot of variation between labs. You might have a product fail for chlorpyrifos at one lab, but pass at another just for a difference of LODs. That definitely needs to be addressed. It doesn't make sense for some labs to fail a company for pesticides and another to be able to pass it. It allows for lab shopping. There also needs to be a review of the compliance sampling protocols. Still to this day, companies in labs are not sampling from the entirety of a batch itself. For example, just 2 weeks ago, we went to do a compliance sampling. The distributor pre-selected 20 units for us to take. We had to leave because they would not let us sample from the entire 4,000 unit batch. We know that that another lab went out and conducted that sampling the very next day. Labs are also sampling at the compliance stage without batch numbers on packaging, without metric UIDs, and without
30
even
seconds.
packaging itself. And then lastly, also public access to COAs. The public deserves to know what is in the cannabis products that they are consuming. It doesn't make sense that only dispensaries have access to these COAs and will not share them with consumers. Yeah, just needs to get implemented and should be an easy thing for the DCC to start requiring. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I see no other commenters on items not on the agenda. Would anybody else like to comment on this agenda item? All right. Would you like to close agenda item number 1, sir?
Yes.
All right, it is closed. We can move on to number 2. Thank you.
All right, now on to item number 3 on the agenda, the standard cannabinoid test method and standard operating procedure, the recent implementation of such. The DCC is interested in hearing feedback from stakeholders on the recent implementation of new regulations governing standard cannabinoid test methods and standing operator procedures adopted pursuant to SB 544. Specifically, the DCC is seeking input on initial and ongoing impact to the commercial cannabis market chain, recommended updates or adjustments, if any, needed to more effectively meet the goals of the statute, including protection of public health and ensuring consumer confidence, and finally, recommendations for future method development. Would like to now open the floor for public comment related to agenda item number 3.
All right, we are now taking public comment on agenda item number 3. As we've stated before, please keep comments limited to this agenda item. If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the icon next to your name if you've logged into the meeting, or by pressing *3 if you've called into the meeting. All commenters will have 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning, and each member of the public will have 1 opportunity to speak on this agenda item. So with that, the floor is open for any commenters. Josh, I have just sent you a request to unmute. There you go.
Thank you. I'll comment on what you spoke about. So the current method will not work unless there's a check and balance system. Any method that's implemented as a standardized method needs to have a check and balance system in place. I hope the DCC takes that into consideration. Recommendations for future method development. That's what was one of the topics on this. Standardized methods do not allow for equivalent methods. Thus, we impose horrible regulation on advancements in science. I think other methods should be allowed into it, and don't standardize additional methods without allowing equivalent methods or things that are reviewed by the DCC to be shown as equivalent, and then let the laboratory hold the liability if it does not. That would make the most sense. Continue on the validate for cannabinoid method. The validation for more cannabinoids for the DCC's flower method is very time costly and costly to a lab financially. A lot of laboratories already validated the methods to include things like THCVA, CBGA, and things like that. And during the verification step of the method, you cannot do the validation or a cross-validation to your previous method. You have to start over and do a full method. For an example, that's about a $50,000 cost to a laboratory to do. And now we have an unposed burden placed upon us again after we've already conducted this analysis and validation and had a DCC approval as an annual licensed lab. This does not make sense. The DCC method has been screened, and I have shared the method with the DCC with our old method and compared to this current method with over 100 samples showing less than a 1%
30 seconds.
RSD relative standard deviation, showing that the two methods would be equivalent, and there is no reason to only use a standardized method. This is a flawed with a system that we're imposing onto laboratories to fix something with another way to fix it. ICAL, fully annual license approved cannabinoid method, shows a less than 1% RSD, like I said. So why would we have to do a full validation? We submitted the ability to do the verification between the two methods and to accept that for the additional cannabinoids, and we were denied. But we still don't understand a reason why, and we can't get a clear answer on that. Please allow for that kind of stuff.
Thank you. All right, Eric, I've just sent you a request to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to add a few things about why the method needs to be updated. It's an inefficient method. It provides undue cost to operators, specifically labs. We have the cost of the solvent and the standards that need to be used is significantly higher than our and most other labs' optimized methods. Yet, as Josh said, it provides equivalent results. It requires the injection of 2 injections for every sample. The first injection is not even needed because it provides or gives THC levels that we can't even report. We would like to change the solvent. There's no need for an ice bath, and the requirement is for a 0.2 gram sample size. We would like that to be increased to 0.5 gram sample size. We think it'll cause less error. I don't think we're alone in this. And I think that is all I have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Call-in user number 5, I've just sent you a request to unmute. There you
Hi,
go.
my name is Dominic from Infinite Cal again. One of the things that Josh had mentioned was to implement a checks and balance system. Along those lines, I think the DCC should use other states as an example in this. Michigan is a state that will require secondary testing for anything that is I believe around 30% THC or higher. I think this is something that the DCC should implement as well. Even with the new standardized method, it's just a way to check that labs are actually following the procedure and are not trying to inflate potency like we have seen over the last several years. This same theory could be used on concentrates as well, on the high-end concentrates to verify potency. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more commenters on agenda item number 3? All right. I don't see any more comments on agenda item. Oh, hold on. Call-in user number 4, I'm sending you a request to unmute. Call-in user number 4, just sent you a request. Press *3 to unmute yourself. Okay. Call-in user number 4, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, you can raise your hand at this point. Otherwise, it looks like we are done with public comment.
Give that person another second.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. All right, call-in user number 4. The request has been sent. *3.
Hi, my name is Evelyn from Encore Labs. I'd like to recommend that the DCC consider widening the sample amount from 100 milligrams to 200 to 210 or something wider. It makes it very difficult and timely for the lab to consistently hit that mass amount. Another thing I'd like to bring up for consideration is a single analyte LCS spike. It is very costly to keep up with this method, as mentioned, and doing a single analyte spike, as allowed in other states such as Arizona, can still improve recovery and help the lab with the cost. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, last call for comments on agenda item number 3. All right, agenda item number 3 is closed.
All right, thank you, everyone. I will consider all of this input when putting forward the recommendations to the full advisory committee. Now on to agenda item number 4, recommendations for future agenda items. There were a few things mentioned earlier on the call, but now is another time to recommend any things that we should agendize for our next lab subcommittee meeting. Moderator, could you please open the floor for public comment for suggestions for future agenda items?
Absolutely. So once again, we are opening the comment period for agenda item number 4. Please keep your comments limited to this agenda item. And if you'd like to make a comment, you raise your hand by clicking the icon next to your name if you've logged into the meeting, or by pressing *3 if you've called in. All commenters will have 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning, and each member of the public will have 1 opportunity to speak on this agenda item. So we will go first to Josh. I've just sent you a request to unmute.
Thank you. Future agenda items that should be immediately brought up in the next meeting for the CAC would be Category 1 pesticide action limits. I believe last time even someone from the DPR came on and made some comments on that. It seems like this has been ignored for years. We're now, 6 years into the regulations with a nonsensical regulation in it of non-detect Category 1 pesticide limits. This can be determined and easily implemented. Please take that into consideration. As someone said before, sampling protocol needs to be defined better in these regulations, as well as the DCC enforcing the fact that the sampling protocol needs to be followed by laboratories. That's something that could be implemented pretty easily as well. As I said before, I think something that needs to be brought up on this call or taken into consideration is the check and balance system. Whatever the DCC finds that fit, being the check and balance system being secondary laboratory review, internal laboratory audits of samples on shelves, or internal laboratory audits of samples on the back stock of laboratories taking bigger back stock of samples so they would have it on their back stock to be sampled if needed. Many other states have shown this in other states that it's effective and works, and California ignores that fact or doesn't seem to be pushing forward on that. A lot of these have been brought up in the past years, have been voted on and agreed on by the CAC, to implement or to push forward, and we don't see any change with it. I hope 2024 is a better year for the DCC in implementing change and making a sustainable system for the testing laboratories. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, call-in user number 5. I've just sent you a request to unmute.
Thank you. This is Dominic from Infinical again. I think one thing that should be added to the agenda is discussing what other cannabinoids should be added to the DCC methods. We've heard from a lot of cultivators and clients who are now all of a sudden not seeing CBGA on their reports or THCVA, and it's completely upended their business and what makes their products unique. The CBGA is also the precursor cannabinoid and is always in a decent concentration in flower. So it doesn't make sense that that one was left off specifically. That is my one suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Tekla Bros, I've just sent you a request to unmute.
The comments of caller, the previous caller that just called in about expanding the cannabinoid list. CBGA was not included for a test of mine, and it's completely upended or just completely made valueless the flower that test was done on, to not have CBGA in it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Are there any more commenters? Oh, yes. Sherman Hom, I've just sent you a request to unmute. Sherman Hom. There you go.
I also agree with the two previous speakers concerning adding some acid forms of cannabinoids to a future agenda, because as I understand it from looking at various research papers, 50 to 90% of all cannabinoids are stored in the trichomes in the acid form. And so CBGA and THCVA would be our suggested additions to the list of cannabinoids. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment and recommendation on a future agenda item? Chair Fraser, it looks like we are out of comments.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your suggestions. We had plenty of attendees today, so hopefully we get some more participation at the next one here. But I would now like to move towards adjournment. And again, I want to thank everyone for your time today, and I look forward to our future conversations. This meeting has been adjourned.